Kyler Murray's been named QB1 and the competition is over. But why do they do it now?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. On today's show, we've talked a lot here on Locked On Vikings about Kyler Murray being named QB1. Happened on Tuesday morning. Had a little emergency pod. Hope you enjoyed that. It was only like 20, 25 minutes. And then, of course, Locked On Vikings After Dark went on Locked On NFL. There's shorts, there's TikToks, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there about that. So now that it's the next morning for you, and the dust has settled a little bit, there are a couple of questions that came up a lot as I was doing that, especially as I was answering questions from like other people in Locked On, right? Other people who were just curious, or like Alex Clance, who does Locked On Cardinals. And of course, he's watching this very closely. And some of the things that I got asked a lot that I figured this show could be like a little FAQ for. But the biggest one was, why would Kyler Murray be named QB1 now? Why would they do it before any preseason games are being played, but after the whole of the dog days of camp are over? Then the other answer is, hey, what if Kyler Murray struggles a little bit? How long until we start to reopen this conversation? And then what happens to JJ McCarthy next? So that's going to be kind of the three topics of this show. But in case this is the first thing you're listening to this week or whatever, and you missed it, Kyler Murray has been officially named QB1 as the Vikings. I think I shouldn't say that, because I don't think the Vikings have like officially done their PR on this, but it's been reported by like ESPN and stuff, and it's been, it's out there. He will be QB1. That's what it is. No more speculation, no more competition. That's what it is. And now Kyler Murray is getting exclusive first team reps. It's the thing, right? So Kyler Murray is the starter. And with regard to the competition, I said this on Locked On NFLs when it first popped in my head, and then like an hour later, I did Locked On Vikings After Dark, and we said and said the same thing. So I'll say it here now. I've been talking about this competition in the context of like an Ohio State Akron game, where you come in with a very heavy favorite, but the game still gets played, and Ohio State's a 30-point favorite in there. And yes, Ohio State won. In this case, Ohio State, the heavy favorite is Kyler Murray. I think just about most people had Kyler Murray as a heavy favorite, although every time I say that, I get yelled at by a bunch of JJ McCarthy people, so you are valid too. But you're in the minority, unfortunately, JJ McCarthy people. And so Kyler Murray, on betting odds and stuff, right, was a heavy favorite by every account and ended up winning the competition. But what I will say is JJ McCarthy covered. If Ohio State won, Akron covered. Maybe Ohio State only won by 15 in a game they were favored by 30. And that does reflect a little bit. Here's another question that happens, right? Like, wait, why did it take Kyler Murray so long to win this competition? And I would say if it were any shorter, if it were 2 days, then you could kind of go back and say, well, was that even really a competition for real? Or were they just going through some kind of motions just to be able to say that they did their due diligence or whatever? But no, this took the entirety of what I would call like proper training camp before we get into the preseason phase of training camp, but like proper, like these are the dog days of camp. That's where we're at. And so to answer the question of why now, we are at a fairly comfortable transition point here. And Kevin O'Connell has claimed that there's always been this plan for this timeline of when they're going to make the decision. And if they were going to pick now, that does kind of pass the smell test. Like that does track. If we were going to take him at face value that, hey, we've got a day in mind that we're going to make the call, them looking forward and saying, after we're done with like kind of vanilla training camp and we start to transition into Giants preseason game prep mode, that would be the time to name a starter. And that would be a decision you might make with the expectation that you've got to get a Kyler Murray ready, that you're going to go with the new guy because you need to get him through the process of preparing for a game and of executing things on the sideline, and you want to make him QB1 for all those preseason games and for joint practices with the Ravens, which will be a huge developmental moment. I shouldn't say developmental, but a huge like preparation moment for Kyler Murray. And so we want all of those. So that's why it's this early. And the reason why it is not even more early is because I think any less would not have been a reasonable chance for J.J. McCarthy to prove his mettle. But as we heard from the beat writers that have been there every day, and as we could see if we watched closely enough with the clips that came out from every day, J.J. McCarthy did not look like the better quarterback. There was a certain level of jump he had to make when it came to processing and speed and, keeping his launch point in the pocket and all of that stuff. To overcome Kyler Murray, he had to improve to a certain degree in all of these things, and he hasn't. He came up short in that, and I wrote a ton of content this week to that effect that you can go in for more details. I'm not going to rehash it all right now, but he came up a little bit short. The Vikings went the other way. What this means for McCarthy, put a pin in it. We'll get to it later in the show. But I think 2 weeks was enough to confirm that. I think it was plenty to confirm that. If you only had 3 days, you could still have kind of said, well, wait a minute, but he could have just, Kyler Murray could fall apart in the next couple of days. How do you know he's going to stay consistent? How do you know this is going to happen? And we did see the bad Kyler Murray days. And so you got a taste of what that is. And then you can go, okay, that's this bad. Do we still decide to go with this? And the answer is yes. If that's as bad as it gets, then that's still our favorite option. So we're going to go with Murray from here on out. But in terms of the timing, it makes sense to me as we have something of an expectation of how this will go. But that expectation is not going to be an assumption. And that's the real key difference between what I think a lot of people expected to happen, which is that everyone will just assume it's Kyler Murray, and anything else they're going into is PR in service of a quarterback that they're going to bench and probably trade away or not move forward with in the next few years. Then for some reason they're trying to placate him, and that was the part that never made sense to me. And the difference between that and, we think Kyler's better, but we're going to check on it. That's all it really was. We're going to check in on that. We're going to double check our priors and make sure that we're not getting caught doing name recognition assumptions. I think that's probably pretty good. For me, a concern that I would have is that, so things are a little bit different when you're prepping for a preseason game. You're not trying to game plan for the Giants, right? You're not looking at what they're doing and saying, let's call all these best plays so that we can beat the Giants, because you don't care if you beat the Giants, right? It's the preseason. But what you're doing is you're dry running that process. So you're going to come up with a game plan, and you might put plays in that game plan that have nothing to do with the Giants, but that, you want to get extra reps on because we got to work this play. We got some problems with it or whatever, right? So what you actually put into that game plan is going to be anybody's guess for for whatever reason, right? But hey, if the Giants run a lot of cover 3, let's put our cover 3 beaters in and work them in this game, and however you want to do that. But you're going to go through the process of preparing an in-game, as if, this is the Wednesday before a game, right? Before an actual, it's week 5 and it's Wednesday. This is the first day. We're looking at the first practice reports and all that. You're going to structure things like that. And of course, they also practiced on Tuesday. So they're for a game on Saturday. So they're going to have that kind of 3-day practice cadence that will then go into the Giants game, right? And so it's sort of a half-cocked simulation of this. And for me, if I'm just checking on it, right? If I'm saying, I think this guy's better, but I want to make sure there's no big red flags, no big lookouts, no big things that are going to make me rethink this decision. I'm looking for things that I'm going to be talking about in week 6 if we're 2-4 and things are horrible and the offense is terrible. I'm going to be looking ahead of time for things that could contribute to that situation. And I would want to go through one of those mock weeks to do that if it were me. And then I would want to go through an actual game where everybody's in live pads, you can get tackled, you can get hit, and see if I still feel the same about Kyler Murray. I would have wanted to do that. The difference between what I would have wanted ideally and what the Vikings did is like 4 practices. Whatever. I'm not going to trip about it. But if I were to kind of compare to like what I thought the ideal plan was, it would have been that. for whatever that is worth to you. But that kind of leads into the next question. What could bring us to that situation where we're starting to rethink this, where we're going and saying, well, yeah, maybe J.J. McCarthy's had a little bit of better time in practice. He's had a couple months. Maybe it's November. Season's kind of slipping away. Maybe we need to make a change. What could happen? What kind of leash will Kyler Murray have? What kind of leash should Kyler Murray have? That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Square. Behind so many of the local businesses we love is Square, a platform designed to help businesses sell, manage, and grow. Whether it's a neighborhood coffee shop, a packed sports bar on game day, or your favorite restaurant, Square brings payments, banking, and more together in one connected system. It helps business owners spend less time managing technology and more time focusing on their customers. Square isn't just a payment processor, it's a complete business platform built to simplify the day-to-day. From accepting every major payment method to managing inventory and helping businesses access their earnings faster, Square gives owners the tools they need to run their business with confidence. There is a local grocery shop that, for some reason, everything there is like way more beautiful. It's got to be like local farms and way cheaper. They use Square and it makes everything so easy. I go in, I pick whatever beautiful zucchini or whatever I want, and I'm through checkout and out in a flash. It is so beautiful. If you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. Right now, you can get up to $200 off of Square hardware at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's SQUARE.com/GO/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Hey, by the way, you can follow me on a whole bunch of new social media now. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram and YouTube Shorts under the name Luke Braun NFL at all of those places, making some shorts about some of this stuff. One of those was sort of a rehash of some of the stuff I talked about on the Friday episode, where I sort of planted my flag. That was, okay, I think I've seen enough. I can go with Kyler Murray now. As well as a wide left article to that effect that came out on Monday, and then they made this decision Tuesday, and a Patreon video with a lot of the same content in it, and now there's a short with one of those clips, and it was the whole thing about Kyler Murray kind of having a smoother operation and being a little bit quicker with his feet and being a little bit quicker with like the physical lower half part of like drop back, set feet, set up to throw, hitching, and all that stuff. If you want to go look at that, that's up on all of those platforms. So I don't know, let's leap forward in time really quick and ask, let's say it's about Thanksgiving week 12. So we got a bye by then. So we would have had 10 games, right? Going into week 12, going into our 11th game. And let's say the Vikings are like 4-6. And it's an ugly 4-6. The offense is struggling. Maybe there's been some injuries on defense or something. Like, let's go into a season where we're not feeling very good about it. And we start to have conversations. Are we sure we have all the right guys out there, right? Should we bench the quarterback? Maybe we're having hot seat conversations about coaches, right? In that situation where you're 4-6, you're not out of it. This hasn't been the worst thing in the world. You're one game away from 500. But it like feels rough. Are we thinking maybe we should put J.J. McCarthy back out there? Like, I feel like for the what kind of leash will Kyler Murray have, we could probably bucket all the answers. You can have the short leash, right? Where if it's, week 2 and Kyler is struggling, you're out of there. We're putting the young guy back in. We weren't really that sure. It was super close. The margins were really thin. We're going to give him a chance instead. And we're going to do this rotational thing. It's going to be like 2013. That's the really short leash, like what they did with Christian Ponder in 2013 and Matt Castle. Then there's, I guess, like the longer leash on the other end of things, where Kyler Murray, no, you're the starter. You struggle, you bumble, you stumble, whatever. We're going to stick with you. We're going to let you work through it. We know you could have a great game the next time, even if you had a bad game this time. It's like where Kirk Cousins would be back when he was with the Vikings. Like, anything that can happen, it doesn't matter. We're never putting Sean Mannion in. Like, we're just going to roll with punches here with the ups and the downs, and you're going to be your guy. And I think in that world where you got the longer leash, there's like the Kirk Cousins fully, you're our guy, probably wouldn't happen with Kyler Murray unless the Vikings give him some kind of contract extension. So if they like extend him, they pay him, $45 million a year, and then he's the guy next year. Well, now the leash is really long, right? Now we're paying you $45 million a year. We're not going to be yanking you in and out with JJ McCarthy. But then there's this thing in the middle where there is some point at which Kyler Murray can struggle enough to incentivize the Vikings to put JJ McCarthy in. And I think with that longer leash scenario, if the Vikings are mathematically eliminated, there becomes a reason to put JJ McCarthy in. If we are going to hold on to the idea of McCarthy as the potential future of the franchise, even though he lost his competition, which O'Connell was asked about this in the presser about all this stuff. And they held a presser, so they did officialize it. What was I talking about earlier? Sorry. It's been a long day. Anyways, in that presser, O'Connell was asked about, what the future is for McCarthy. Again, we'll get to it a little more later, but he basically said that we still have this idea of, he's still holding the pen on his story. We still are trying to help him be the best quarterback he can, blah, blah, blah. And so if you're holding to that idea that we're going to keep developing McCarthy and someday it's going to be his turn, then it would behoove you to utilize those meaningless games as opportunities for McCarthy to develop. Get him more than 10, right? If you're going to say he's the guy that's only played 10 games, if you're eliminated with 5 to go like you were last year, use those 5 on JJ McCarthy. Go from 10 to 15. It's a 50% increase, baby. Look at all that experience. That might be a reason to yank Kyler Murray. Might not even mean that they're not going to extend him or whatever. It just maybe makes more sense to go put the other guy in just to get tread on his tires, if you don't care about the result of the game anymore because you're eliminated. So that's like the long leash is you go all the way up to mathematical elimination, and then you start treating them like preseason games and playing the young guys. I think the answer probably lies closer to that or it should. For me, I just don't respect indecision. I don't respect the 2013 Vikings plan at quarterback. I don't think many of you do either, where you're in this guy and then it's going to be him and then there's a little tweak to his ankle, so we got to put the other guy back in and, hey, let's try Josh Freeman and let's do this. I don't like that. Make a call and stick with the call. You think that guy's a better quarterback? If he has a bad game, that your reasoning for why you think he's a better quarterback shouldn't be undone by a bad game or two. So that short leash thing, I would be very critical of. There's like the intermediate one, though. There's that thing where you're 4-6 and the season's slipping away. And what if a shot in the arm is what they need, right? A little later in the season, McCarthy seems to be grasping things a little better than he was a couple months ago. The humbling of being benched maybe is exactly what he needed, like the Ty Dunn piece that came out implied. Maybe that was the thing, right? And it's November, and hey, if we rattle off like 3 more, we're right back in the hunt. We're right back in the thick of this thing. Maybe we need a shot in the arm. I could see this being the strategy the Vikings employ, but I'll get out in front of it and say, I probably won't like that very much because that goes in the same indecision category for me. Of course, it would depend on how I feel about how Kyler Murray's playing, right? But I want to hold to my own principle that I just laid out. The reasons that I have chosen for Kyler Murray, of course, in a small sample, so let me, watch a preseason game and make sure I'm right about all this. And I didn't just see, the specific couple of camp reps that misled me, right? So I'll check on it. But assuming that I see the same stuff with Kyler Murray, that quicker operation, of course, the improv ability, the heightened accuracy, because his mechanical flaws, while they do cause inaccuracy, they're lesser flaws that cause inaccuracy less often. If that all continues to play out in the preseason, I can lock it in and say, hey, yeah, he threw like 3 interceptions in this one, but he still has these fundamental things that make him better than the last I saw of JJ McCarthy. And so for me to want to put McCarthy in, I'm going to have to see that I'm going to have to see that changed with McCarthy. Or hear, hey, he's doing something different mechanically now. It's actually a totally different thing. Trust me, go watch him, when he goes and takes the field or whatever. I'd be willing to listen to that. But that's kind of what it's got to take. What I wouldn't do, and what we'll probably get at some point if Kyler Murray starts to have a slump, is people starting to say, well, he's playing horrible. Look at how bad he is. Surely JJ McCarthy could play better than this, right? That's what you always get with the backup. Maybe not because people are like deeply insane about McCarthy. Maybe that won't come up. But I mean, we did it about like Nick Mullins with Sam Darnold in 2024. Like that did happen. There were mailbag questions after that Jags game where he should have thrown like 5 interceptions and there were a couple dropped ones. That really bad one. People were like, should we put Nick Mullins in? This was about Sam Darnold en route to a 14-3 season. Like people kind of always ask it. That's where I'm going to draw a line. I'm not doing that. We can't be doing that. For me, now that Kyler Murray has been anointed the guy, he's your dude. 2026 is the season of Kyler Murray. There is no going back. There can be no waffling on this. You've declared a dude. He is your dude. If he flames out, the guy that you picked him over is not going to be the salve for your problems. And that would go back to the same thing I said about all the benchings last year. You were either wrong then or you're wrong now if you're waffling that much. Either way, you got egg on your face. So if Kyler Murray struggles, maybe both guys were bad. And that's much more likely than J.J. McCarthy secretly being way better than anybody saw throughout 2 weeks of camp. So if Kyler Murray struggles, understand the guy he beat is not the guy that's going to fix everything. We might just have a bad QB situation and have to go figure it out in 2027. But speaking of the 2027 offseason, I do want to look ahead a little bit and see what is the future of J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make a free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you get a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is a fun way to stay engaged with the whole season, whether you're just watching one team or the MLB as a whole throughout the whole thing. And the best part is you get to do it every day. So that means that you could just pick Shohei Ohtani every single day. Every single time he goes yard, you get a profit boost, or you could go analyze the matchups, who's good against left-handed pitchers, that whole thing, and try to figure it out. If you are ready to play your game today, join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. So what happens to J.J. McCarthy now? There's a few options. I think the one the Vikings are intending to do, or the one they're presenting forward, is, okay, J.J. McCarthy's the backup now. That's what Kevin O'Connell said on the podium. McCarthy is the backup, not Wentz, by the way. I know there was some push for that. I know Tyler was saying that was going to happen on this show. I had to kind of slow him down there. J.J. McCarthy is QB2. Now, preseason is going to happen. If McCarthy totally, pees down his shorts and Carson Wentz looks like he actually might be close to doing it, and maybe we revisit that conversation. But I have yet to see anything from Wentz, even when he was healthy last year, that would suggest that he would be able to overtake McCarthy. I was very adamant about that in the middle of last year. That J.J. McCarthy is just a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. Sorry to disappoint. So I'm not going to entertain that right now. J.J. McCarthy's the backup. Kyler Murray gets hurt. J.J. McCarthy goes in. That's probably what's next for J.J. McCarthy, not even calling Kyler Murray injury prone or trying to appeal to his past injury history, which is part of it, sure. But just by the law of averages, it's the NFL. QBs get hurt. More teams than not have to rely on their backup at some point, and that will be J.J. McCarthy. So if you're just playing the odds game, J.J. McCarthy hasn't taken his last snap under center in purple. Even if he is gone after this season and he gets traded in the offseason or at the deadline or whatever, there's still a chance. So that's probably what happens next. And that will be a really interesting moment to watch. I've talked about it before. If we get to that moment, if Kyler Murray doesn't get through all 17, I shouldn't treat it like a guarantee either, right? That he won't. Like maybe J.J. McCarthy will just sit on the bench all year because Kyler Murray stays healthy. But if we do get that J.J. McCarthy moment, again, think about what that's going to be like in the middle of the kind of breakneck pace of the season. We won't have months and months to debate it, right? It's going to kind of just happen. And then, okay, we are processing, the last game where Kyler Murray got hurt, whatever else happened in that game, and the ref call we're mad about, and, so-and-so got 2 sacks, and that's a story. And we're going to be processing all of that stuff. And then by like Wednesday of that week, we're looking forward and saying, oh, whoa, J.J. McCarthy's starting this one, against whoever it is. He's starting this game against the Lions. I don't know who, but okay, let's say it's the Lions, right? J.J. McCarthy's starting this game against the Lions. And we're going to Detroit, and they're wearing their rivalry uniforms, which will happen when we play in Detroit this year. We'll get those. Last year, those were unveiled at the end of August. So I guess those are coming soon. And McCarthy's going to take the field in that game where he had his 9 moment and his weird thing in that same locker room. And we'll be talking about all that. And then we're going to have 2 things going on, right? One, hey, really important game against Detroit, divisional matchup. That's an important one. We're going to hope we win that game. And then this undercurrent of how it could potentially be a referendum for however Kyler Murray has played up to that point in the weeks leading up to that game. Now, J.J. McCarthy's going to get a chance to say, here's what I can do in a real game, in camp, not shorts, not practice, not camp, not shorts, not practice, in full pads against a team that wants to kill him, that's mad about last year. And I'm going maybe too deep into the Lions thing, but won't that be an interesting moment? Should we get something like that? Where now suddenly you get this like third chance. This first chance was last year, second chance was this camp, third chance is now this little moment to go prove something. And if he falls flat on his face and the Vikings lose and he stinks, then the Vikings are probably moving on next year. They're probably trading him for some day 3 capital just to kind of get the black cloud out of the organization and move on, turn the page, extend Kyler Murray. That'll be it. But if McCarthy makes it interesting, now you're going to have debates for the rest of the time. Let's say he plays 2 games. Kyler Murray goes through concussion protocol. Let's say that's what it is. And that's 2 weeks. And J.J. McCarthy plays those 2 weeks. And he plays pretty well in those 2 weeks. Maybe they win those 2 games. And Kyler Murray is closer to like a 500 quarterback because we have a way bigger sample. And suddenly you're going, 2-0 versus 5-5. What are we doing? People will start to do that bad faith thing. And you get to the end of the year. And of course, Kyler, who has played 15 of 17, you have a way bigger sample. You've got some ups, some downs. You've got the classics of a Kyler Murray season, and you look at McCarthy and you go, are we going to have another competition next year? Maybe, or what are we going to do? And that would deeply complicate a Kyler Murray contract extension talk, which kind of no matter what happens this year is going to be a huge talker next January and February, or whenever the Vikings season ends. We're going to talk about Kyler Murray's contract. That's going to be the A topic. Are we extending this guy? Are we paying him $45-50 million a year? 60, right? Like that could be going rate if he plays really, really well. If he makes a all pro, he goes totally gangbusters because he finally is, outside of the evil Arizona Cardinals organization. He went crazy. And all of that would be so complicated if you possibly felt like you had a cheap guy that could also do the job on the roster. And hey, he played those 2 games and he looked way better. And maybe this will work out if we want to go on that developmental track and save $60 million a year. It would be this total wrench in the engine. So that's what's next for J.J. McCarthy. You want to talk about trades and what would his trade value be and what draft pick can we expect to get? I do not care. Ask somebody else that question. I don't care. Probably not much if you're benching him on year 3, right? After 10 games, you're benching him for some other guy that you got for the veteran minimum because he happened to be, cut from his team he was the franchise quarterback for, and they're paying him $40 million to go away. Like the whole perception around J.J. McCarthy, that dude is radioactive. You might as well walk around trying to sell a colostomy bag in a hospital. You're not going to get a lot back for that. So I don't know why that's what came to my mind. It's been a day. So I don't care about the trade competition and stuff. And we'll have plenty of time at the end of the season to talk about how that happens. And if it happens like at the trade deadline or whatever, we'll talk about it then. I don't need to spend a lot of breath on it. But the point is, unless Kyler Murray plays 17 healthy and plays 17 well enough to not have us thinking about putting in J.J. McCarthy, there's going to be another chance. And how that goes will probably be just because it's a more recent memory, a more prominent piece of evidence than what happened in Atlanta in week 2 of 2025, which will have been 2 years ago by the time we're talking about any of this. those last couple will matter more. And so it might be a turbocharged version of the sort of narratives we had around the end of last season. Hey, he ended the season really strong with that 5, so we still feel all right about it. It might be a more turbocharged thing. The failures in Lambeau last year, or the struggles against the Bears or Ravens at home, and that like really bad slump, that Atlanta game, all the injuries, the high ankle sprain, and all that stuff will be a much more distant memory. And whatever happened for better or worse, whatever happens in whatever time we need the backup to spell us, even if it's like a quarter because Murray twisted his ankle and needed to get it taped, or it's, the back half of a blowout, or whatever it is going to be fresher in our minds when we're making these long-term decisions. And so whatever long-term decision is going to be made with a lot different information than what we have right now in terms of how Kyler Murray plays and how JJ McCarthy plays if he takes the field for whatever reason. So what's next? Talk to me after we've seen these guys in real pads. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.